You are not procrastinating because you are tired. You are procrastinating because you are betraying yourself. Every delay is a quiet vote against the person you said you wanted to become. This is not about time management. This is about self-respect. When you delay, you teach your brain that your word means nothing. And when your word means nothing, discipline collapses. This audiobook will show you why procrastination is not laziness, it is self-abandonment, and how disciplined action rebuilds trust with yourself, one decision at a time. Listen carefully. Because the cost of delay is your identity. Chapter 1: Procrastination is not a habit. It's a decision against yourself. Let's remove the lie first. Procrastination is not a habit. It is not a personality trait. It is not something you were born with. Procrastination is a decision. A decision you make in small, quiet moments. A decision to delay. A decision to avoid discomfort. A decision to step away from your own standard. And every time you make that decision, something deeper happens. Every delay rewrites who you believe you are. That's the key. Most people think procrastination is about time. They think it's about organization. They think it's about motivation. It's not. It's about self-betrayal. You had a moment where you knew what needed to be done. You felt the resistance. And instead of acting, you postponed. You have a choice. You always have a choice. And when you choose delay, you are not just delaying a task. You are training your mind to associate discomfort with avoidance. That training compounds. Let's make this real. You tell yourself you'll send one email tomorrow. Just one. You don't do it. You tell yourself you'll start in the morning. Morning comes. You scroll instead. Nothing explodes. No one calls you out. Life continues. And that's why procrastination is so dangerous. Because the damage is invisible. But internally, something has shifted. Your brain just learned a lesson. When things feel uncomfortable, we retreat. That lesson gets stored. Not as a thought, as an identity. Every delay rewrites who you believe you are. That's the key. You start seeing yourself as someone who means well. Someone who plans. Someone who will get to it. But not someone who acts. And the brain believes what you repeatedly show it. You don't rise to your goals. You sink to your standards. And procrastination is how standards quietly decay. Now listen carefully. It's not about laziness. It's not about intelligence. It's not about discipline in the way people think. It's about keeping your word to yourself. When you say, "I'll do this," and you don't, something breaks. Not externally. Internally. Trust breaks. And without self-trust, discipline is impossible. That's why you can read books, watch videos, make plans, and still not move. Because your mind doesn't believe you anymore. You taught it not to. You have a choice. Right now. You can keep framing procrastination as a habit, something passive, something accidental. Or you can tell the truth. I chose comfort over integrity. That's the key. Once you tell the truth, you gain power. Because habits feel automatic. Decisions can be changed. Let's look at a simple example. You need to clean your workspace. 5 minutes. Nothing dramatic. You feel resistance. Not pain. Not exhaustion. Just friction. And you delay. What did you really teach yourself? Not that cleaning is hard. You taught yourself that discomfort is in control. That feeling gets authority. It becomes the decision maker. And the more authority it gets, the weaker you become. This is how procrastination scales. Today it's cleaning. Tomorrow it's a phone call. Next year it's your life. Same mechanism. Same pattern. Every delay rewrites who you believe you are. That's the key. Now here's where most people get it wrong. They try to fix procrastination by feeling better. They wait for motivation. They wait for clarity. They wait for confidence. But confidence is not a prerequisite for action. Action is the prerequisite for confidence. You don't need their permission. You don't need to feel ready. You don't need perfect conditions. You need to act while uncomfortable. Because procrastination ends the moment you stop negotiating with discomfort. You have a choice. Every moment of resistance asks you a question. Who's in control here? Your feelings? Or your standards? That's the real battle. And this is why procrastination is self-betrayal. You knew the standard. You ignored it. Do that once, and it feels small. Do it daily, and it becomes who you are. Now let's shift something important. This is not about being harsh. This is not about guilt. This is not about self-hate. It's about self-respect. Self-respect is built through alignment. When what you say and what you do match. Every time they don't match, respect erodes. That's why procrastination creates shame. Even when no one is watching. Because part of you knows the truth. You had a choice. And you chose against yourself. But here's the reversal. You rebuild self-trust the same way you destroyed it. Through small decisions. Not big promises. Not dramatic changes. Small, immediate action. When you act despite resistance, your brain updates. I keep my word. That's the key. And it doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to be done. You don't eliminate procrastination by thinking differently. You eliminate it by proving differently. Action is proof. That's why discipline comes before motivation. That's why structure beats feelings. It's not about personality. It's not about talent. It's not about laziness, it's about discipline. You have a choice. Every time you delay, you reinforce the old identity. Every time you act, you weaken it. There is no neutral. Now let me be clear. You will feel resistance again. Soon. That's not failure. That's the test. The feeling is not the problem. Your response to it is. Stop asking, how do I feel? Start asking, what did I decide? That's the shift. Because once you see procrastination as a decision, excuses lose power. You don't need more insight. You need fewer negotiations. Say less. Do more. Keep promises small. Keep them non-negotiable. And remember this line, repeat it until it sinks in. Every delay rewrites who you believe you are. So does every action. You are not stuck. You are trained. And training can be reversed. But only by choice. You made the decision to delay. You can make the decision to act. Now you understand the truth behind procrastination. But understanding is not enough. Next, we need to talk about what delay really destroys, not time, not productivity, but something far more important. You learned that procrastination is a decision against yourself. Now let's talk about what that decision costs you every single day. Chapter 2, Every delay teaches your brain you are not reliable. Trust is not emotional. Trust is mechanical. Your brain does not trust you because you believe in yourself. Your brain trusts you because you keep promises. That's the key. Most people think self-trust is about confidence. It's not. Confidence is a result. Self-trust is built the same way trust is built between people. Consistency. Follow through. Evidence. When you say you'll do something and you do it, trust increases. When you say you'll do something and you don't, trust breaks. It's that simple. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Your brain is always watching. It remembers every promise you kept. And every promise you broke. Not emotionally. Neurologically. That's why procrastination is so destructive. Because it's not one big failure. It's thousands of small betrayals. You tell yourself, I'll start tomorrow. I'll do it later. I'll get to it. And you don't. Nothing dramatic happens. No punishment. No alarm. But internally, your brain logs the data. This person does not follow through. That's the key. You don't lack motivation, you lack credibility with yourself. Read that again. You don't lack motivation, you lack credibility with yourself. That's why motivation doesn't show up anymore. Why would it? Motivation follows trust. Not the other way around. Let's make this real. Imagine a friend who constantly cancels plans. They mean well. They apologize. They explain. At first, you forgive them. Then you adjust your expectations. Eventually, you stop relying on them. You don't hate them. You just don't trust them. Your brain treats you the same way. Every time you delay, it adjusts expectations downward. It stops mobilizing energy for your goals. It stops responding to your plans. Not out of spite. Out of efficiency. Why invest resources in someone who doesn't act? That's the brutal logic. You have a choice. You can keep telling yourself the problem is motivation. Or you can accept the truth. You don't lack motivation, you lack credibility with yourself. That's the key. And credibility is not rebuilt with speeches. It's rebuilt with proof. Small proof. Daily proof. This is where most people self-sabotage. They try to rebuild trust with big promises. I'm changing my life. I'm going all in. I'll never procrastinate again. Your brain doesn't believe that. Why would it? You haven't kept the small promises yet. Big promises with no follow-through actually make things worse. They deepen the trust gap. So stop that. Stop promising more than you can deliver. Start delivering more than you promise. That's the shift. You don't need their permission. You don't need approval. You don't need motivation. You need to become reliable. Let's talk mechanics. Your brain has one core question. Can I trust this person to act when it's uncomfortable? Every time you delay, the answer becomes no. And here's what people miss. It's not the size of the task that matters. It's the integrity of the response. Delaying a 5-minute task does more damage than failing at a hard one. Why? Because the brain interprets it as weakness, not limitation. You weren't incapable. You avoided. And avoidance teaches the brain that discomfort is dangerous. That lesson compounds. Soon, your brain resists effort before you even try. Not because you're lazy. Because it learned you're unreliable. That's the key. You don't lack motivation, you lack credibility with yourself. Now here's the reversal. Credibility is rebuilt the same way it was destroyed. One kept promise at a time. But here's the rule. The promise must be small enough that you can't excuse breaking it. 5 minutes. 1 email. 1 page. 1 action. No negotiation. You act. Then you stop. That's it. Why? Because your brain updates through completion, not intensity. Completion sends the signal. I do what I say. That signal matters more than effort. More than ambition. More than emotion. That's why discipline beats motivation. Motivation is a feeling. Credibility is a system. It's not about confidence, it's about discipline. Say it with me. It's not about motivation, it's about discipline. You have a choice. You can keep waiting to feel ready. Or you can start acting reliable. Those are the only 2 paths. Let's be clear. You will feel resistance again. Often. That's normal. But resistance is not a stop sign. It's a checkpoint. It asks, are you trustworthy, or do you just talk? That's the test. Pass it with action. Not perfect action. Not inspired action. Consistent action. You don't need to feel good. You need to be consistent. And consistency does something powerful. It restores internal alignment. When what you say and what you do match, friction disappears. That's when energy returns. That's when focus sharpens. That's when motivation follows. Not before. After. You don't need their permission. You don't need validation. You need proof. Now let's remove another lie. People say, I'm inconsistent. No. You are consistently breaking promises. That's still consistency. Change what you repeat, and identity changes automatically. You don't lack motivation, you lack credibility with yourself. Say it again. Because until you accept that, you'll keep searching for the wrong solution. You don't fix credibility with inspiration. You fix it with execution. This is why planners don't change people. Why books don't change people. Why motivation fades. Because none of those prove reliability. Only action does. And action doesn't need to be dramatic. It needs to be immediate. When you feel resistance, act within 5 seconds. Shrink the task. Execute. No internal debate. Debate is where reliability dies. Decide once. Act fast. That's the discipline. Now understand this. Every kept promise strengthens you. Every broken one weakens you. There is no neutral. Your identity is being updated daily. So ask yourself this. If someone treated you the way you treat yourself, would you trust them? That's the mirror. And the good news? Trust can be rebuilt faster than it was destroyed. But only if you stop lying to yourself about the cause. You don't lack motivation. You don't lack talent. You lack credibility with yourself. That's the key. Fix that, and everything else follows. You learn that procrastination is a decision. You learn that delay destroys self-trust. Now we need to confront the biggest lie people use to justify that delay. The lie that keeps them weak. The lie called motivation. You're ready for the next level. Chapter 3, Motivation is the lie that keeps you weak. Motivation is not missing. It's misleading. That's the truth most people avoid. They say, I just don't feel motivated. They say, I'll start when I feel ready. They say, once I get inspired, I'll act. That language sounds harmless. It sounds reasonable. It's not. It's a lie that keeps you weak. That's the key. Waiting for motivation trains your brain to obey feelings instead of standards. It hands authority to emotion. And once emotion is in control, discipline disappears. You have a choice. You can live as a responder to feelings. Or you can live as a leader of actions. High performers are not more motivated than you. They are less dependent on motivation. They don't ask, do I feel like it? They ask, what did I decide? That's the difference. Action creates motivation. Waiting destroys it. Say it again. Action creates motivation. Waiting destroys it. Most people get the order wrong. They believe motivation comes first. Then action follows. That belief is the trap. Because motivation is a feeling. And feelings are unreliable. They change with sleep. With stress. With mood. With weather. If your life depends on motivation, your life will be inconsistent. That's the key. Authority comes from acting without emotional permission. You don't need their permission. You don't need your feelings' permission. You need to move. Let's break this down. When you wait to feel ready, you are telling your brain, I only act when conditions are perfect. Your brain hears that and adapts. It delays energy. It delays focus. It delays urgency. Why mobilize resources now, if action might not happen? So motivation drops further. And you misinterpret that drop as a problem. It's not a problem. It's a response to your pattern. You trained it. Action creates motivation. Waiting destroys it. That's the key. Let's talk about how high performers actually operate. They don't wake up inspired. They wake up committed. Commitment does not require feeling good. It requires decision. They act while tired. They act while bored. They act while uncertain. And here's what happens. Once action starts, chemistry shifts. Momentum builds. Clarity appears. Motivation shows up after movement. Never before. This is not philosophy. This is behavior. Think about exercise. No one feels motivated before starting. But 5 minutes in, energy rises. That's not magic. That's physiology responding to action. Waiting would have killed that momentum. Same with work. Same with difficult conversations. Same with discipline. Action creates motivation. Waiting destroys it. Now let's expose the deeper cost of waiting. When you wait for motivation, you send a message. I am not in control. That message becomes identity. You start seeing yourself as someone who needs external force. Someone who needs hype. Someone who needs pressure. That's weakness disguised as patience. And patience has nothing to do with delay. Patience is enduring discomfort while acting. Delay is avoiding discomfort while waiting. Huge difference. You have a choice. You can stop outsourcing authority to your emotions. Or you can keep letting them run your life. That's the line. Now let's be practical. How do you break the motivation trap? You reverse the sequence. You decide before you feel. You act before confidence arrives. You start before clarity is complete. That's discipline. It's not about talent, it's about discipline. Say it. It's not about motivation, it's about discipline. Discipline is not intensity. It's consistency without negotiation. Here's a rule you need to adopt. When resistance appears, shrink the task and start immediately. Not later. Not after thinking. Immediately. Why? Because hesitation feeds the lie. Hesitation gives emotion time to argue. And emotion always argues for comfort. Start small. Start ugly. Start slow. Just start. Once you start, the body follows. The mind follows. Motivation follows. Action creates motivation. Waiting destroys it. Now listen carefully. You will never feel ready for the life you want. Readiness is a myth invented by fear. Readiness comes after repetition. Not before. If you wait to feel ready, you will wait forever. That's not pessimism. That's pattern recognition. People who win don't eliminate fear. They move with it. They don't silence doubt. They act anyway. They don't wait for confidence. They build it through execution. That's the key. Now let's dismantle another excuse. People say, I just need the right mindset. No. Mindset is shaped by action, not affirmations. Your mind believes what you repeatedly do. If you delay, your mindset becomes cautious. If you act, your mindset becomes decisive. You don't think your way into discipline. You act your way into it. That's why reading doesn't change people. Watching doesn't change people. Doing does. And doing starts without motivation. You have a choice. You can keep searching for the feeling. Or you can become the person who acts without it. Those are the only options. Now let's give you a concrete instruction. For the next 7 days, stop asking how you feel before acting. Replace the question. Instead of, do I feel motivated? Ask, what is the next physical action? Not the whole plan. Not the big goal. The next action. Then do it immediately. No delay. No debate. 5 minutes is enough. Stop early if needed. But start immediately. Why? Because starting rewires identity. And identity drives behavior. That's the real leverage. Action creates motivation. Waiting destroys it. Repeat it until it replaces the lie. Now understand this. Motivation will still come and go. That's normal. But it will no longer control you. You become someone who moves regardless. That's strength. That's authority. That's self-respect in motion. You don't need their permission. You don't need your emotions' approval. You need standards. And standards require action. You've now seen the lie of motivation. You've seen how waiting weakens you. You've learned the correct order: act first, feel later. But there's another force that keeps people stuck even after they understand this. A force more addictive than laziness. More subtle than fear. You're ready to confront it. You stopped waiting for motivation. Now let's expose what you've been protecting all along. Chapter 4, Comfort is the Real Addiction. Let's tell the truth. You are not addicted to laziness. You are addicted to comfort. That's the real problem. Procrastination is not avoidance of work. It is avoidance of emotional friction. That's the key. You don't delay because the task is hard. You delay because the feeling is uncomfortable. Boredom, uncertainty, self-doubt, mental effort. Those are the triggers. And instead of facing them, you escape. Comfort becomes the drug. You have a choice. You can feel a small amount of discomfort now. Or you can feel a much larger amount of regret later. There is no third option. Comfort today is pain tomorrow. Say it again. Comfort today is pain tomorrow. Most people don't see this because comfort is socially approved. Scrolling looks harmless. Planning looks productive. Researching looks responsible. But they are often escapes. Let's be honest. How many times have you prepared instead of starting? How many times have you researched instead of executing? How many times have you planned instead of doing the work? That's not discipline. That's avoidance with better branding. That's the key. Comfort disguises itself as productivity. And because no one criticizes you for it, the addiction grows. You don't need their permission to stop this. You don't need validation. You need awareness. Comfort feels good now. That's why it's dangerous. The brain is wired to chase relief. Short-term relief. So when discomfort appears, the brain looks for exits. Phone. Videos. Notifications. Endless information. Not because you're weak. Because you trained it that way. Every time you escape discomfort, your brain learns. Avoidance works. That lesson sticks. And soon, discomfort triggers craving. Craving for ease. Craving for distraction. Craving for comfort. That's addiction. Not chemical. Behavioral. And behavioral addictions are harder to see because they look normal. Everyone scrolls. Everyone procrastinates. Everyone delays. That's how average becomes invisible. You have a choice. You can keep numbing friction. Or you can use it as a signal to act. That's the shift. High performers don't eliminate discomfort. They interpret it differently. When discomfort appears, they don't escape. They lean in. They say, "This is the work." That's the key. Discomfort is not a warning sign. It's a direction. Let's dismantle another illusion. People think discipline is about effort. It's not. It's about tolerance. Tolerance for boredom. Tolerance for uncertainty. Tolerance for friction. Most people can work hard when they feel good. Very few can work steadily when they don't. That's why comfort is the real divider. Not talent. Not intelligence. Comfort. It's not about laziness, it's about discipline. Say it. It's not about laziness, it's about discipline. Discipline is the ability to stay with discomfort without escaping. That's it. Now let's talk about the most common comfort traps. Scrolling is the obvious one. But planning is worse. Planning feels productive. It feels smart. It feels safe. But planning without action is comfort. Research is another trap. You tell yourself you're being thorough. But really, you're avoiding exposure. Action exposes you to judgment. To failure. To reality. Comfort protects you from that. That's why it's addictive. You stay in control. You stay untested. But nothing grows there. Comfort today is pain tomorrow. That pain shows up quietly. In lost confidence. In missed opportunities. In the feeling that life is passing. Not dramatic. Gradual. That's why people wake up years later confused. They didn't fail once. They chose comfort thousands of times. Now here's the hard truth. You don't need more willpower to break this addiction. Willpower is fragile. You need standards. Standards remove debate. When discomfort appears, the standard decides. Not your mood. Example. Your standard is: when I feel resistance, I start for 5 minutes. No negotiation. 5 minutes is not about productivity. It's about breaking the escape pattern. Once you stay with discomfort, something shifts. The craving weakens. The urge fades. Why? Because discomfort peaks, then passes. But only if you don't escape. Most people never learn this because they always flee too early. That's the key. Discomfort is temporary. Avoidance is permanent. You have a choice. You can keep running from friction. Or you can train yourself to stay. Staying builds strength. Running builds dependence. Now listen carefully. Comfort is not evil. But comfort before effort is destructive. Earn comfort. Don't consume it prematurely. Rest after action is recovery. Rest before action is avoidance. Huge difference. And discipline is knowing the difference. You don't need their permission to be uncomfortable. You don't need approval. You need to stop protecting yourself from growth. Because growth feels rough at first. Always. Here's another instruction you need to apply. When you catch yourself escaping, pause. Ask one question. What feeling am I avoiding right now? Name it. Boredom. Fear. Confusion. Then act directly into it. Not aggressively. Not perfectly. Directly. That's exposure therapy for discipline. And exposure weakens addiction. The more you face discomfort, the less power it has. Soon, comfort stops controlling you. You choose when to rest. You choose when to push. That's authority. That's self-mastery. That's freedom. Comfort today is pain tomorrow. But discomfort today? That's strength tomorrow. Now understand this. Procrastination survives because comfort is easy. But easy lives are expensive. They cost confidence. They cost respect. They cost time. And time never refunds itself. You don't beat comfort by fighting it. You beat it by outgrowing it. By becoming someone who values progress over ease. That identity is built one uncomfortable action at a time. You already know this. You feel it every time you avoid. That quiet dissatisfaction. That's not guilt. That's awareness. Listen to it. You have a choice. You can obey the addiction. Or you can break it through action. Not tomorrow. Now. You've learned that procrastination is not laziness. You've learned that motivation is unreliable. You've learned that comfort is the real trap. But there's another reason people cling to comfort. A deeper one. They are afraid of discovering the truth about themselves. You stopped numbing discomfort. Now it's time to face what you've been protecting. Chapter 5, You delay because you fear seeing your true level. Let's go deeper. Procrastination is not just comfort. It's protection. Protection of the ego. That's the truth most people avoid. You don't delay because you can't do the work. You delay because you don't want to see what happens when you try. That's the key. As long as you don't act, your potential stays imaginary. Untested. Untouched. Fantasy feels safe. Reality is dangerous. Because reality gives feedback. And feedback threatens the ego. Delay protects the ego. Action exposes the truth. Say it again. Delay protects the ego. Action exposes the truth. This is why procrastination feels strangely comforting even when it hurts. It preserves the idea that you could be great. Not that you are. Not that you will be. But that you could be. And could be is a very comfortable place to live. No failure there. No limits there. No proof there. But also no growth. You have a choice. You can protect the fantasy. Or you can confront reality. You can't do both. That's the line. Most people choose delay because delay keeps the story alive. If I had more time. If conditions were better. If I really tried. Those sentences are shields. They protect identity. But identity protected by delay becomes fragile. Because deep down, you know the truth. You're not avoiding failure. You're avoiding confirmation. Confirmation that you might not be as skilled as you imagined. As disciplined as you hoped. As ready as you claimed. That's uncomfortable. So you delay. Delay protects the ego. Action exposes the truth. That's the key. Now let's remove another lie. People say, I'm afraid of failing. No. Failure is clear. Failure is defined. Failure is honest. What you fear is finding your current level. Because once you see it, excuses disappear. You can no longer blame imagination. You can no longer hide behind intention. You are exposed. And exposure forces responsibility. That's why action is scary. Action says, this is where I am. Not where you wish you were. Not where you pretend you are. Where you are. Most people would rather live with illusion than face that truth. So they plan. They research. They think. They do everything except the one thing that would reveal reality. You don't need their permission to stop this. You don't need validation. You need courage. And courage does not mean confidence. It means willingness to be seen even by yourself. Here's the paradox. Avoiding action feels like self-protection. But it actually weakens you. Because the ego you're protecting becomes more fragile over time. It can't tolerate challenge. It can't tolerate feedback. It can't tolerate effort. So the bar keeps lowering. And you call it being realistic. That's not realism. That's retreat. It's not about fear, it's about discipline. Say it. It's not about fear, it's about discipline. Discipline says, I will see the truth and deal with it. Not tomorrow. Now. Now let's talk about what action really does. Action removes fantasy. The moment you act, imagination collapses. And reality steps in. Reality says, this works. This doesn't. You're strong here. You're weak here. That information is priceless. But only if you're willing to receive it. Most people aren't. They'd rather protect the story. But stories don't build skill. Truth does. You have a choice. You can stay attached to who you think you are. Or you can become who you actually are capable of being. The bridge is action. And yes, action will show gaps. That's not humiliation. That's instruction. Every master was once confronted by their true level. They didn't quit. They didn't hide. They adjusted. That's growth. But growth requires exposure. And exposure requires action. Delay protects the ego. Action exposes the truth. Now let's give you a practical reframe. The goal of action is not success. The goal is data. Feedback. You are not acting to prove your worth. You are acting to measure your position. That removes pressure. You're not on trial. You're in training. But training only works if you show up. Most people delay because they want to look good before they feel ready. But readiness comes from repetition, not reflection. You don't prepare to act. You act to prepare. That's the key. Now let's talk about identity. As long as you delay, your identity stays theoretical. As soon as you act, identity becomes factual. And facts can be improved. Theoretical identities cannot. This is why procrastination keeps people stuck for years. They keep protecting a version of themselves that doesn't exist yet. And in doing so, they prevent it from ever existing. You don't need their permission to be bad at something. You don't need approval to start small. You need humility. Humility says, I'm willing to see the truth. Ego says, I'm not ready yet. Which one moves you forward? You have a choice. Now let's address the final excuse. People say, I don't want to waste effort if I'm not good enough. That's backwards. Effort is what makes you good enough. No one earns the right to start by being talented. They earn it by showing up. Action is not a declaration of mastery. It's an admission of ignorance. And that admission is powerful. Because once you stop pretending, you can start improving. That's freedom. Delay protects the ego. Action exposes the truth. But here's the real danger. The longer you delay, the harder it becomes to act. Not because the task changes, but because the ego gets more invested in the fantasy. Years go by. And now action threatens not just comfort, but identity. That's how people get trapped. Don't let it go that far. Expose the truth early. Reality is not your enemy. It's your instructor. Now here's your instruction. For the next task you're avoiding, redefine success. Success is not doing it well. Success is doing it honestly. Start. Observe. Adjust. That's it. No performance. No proving. Just data. Once you act, fear loses its grip. Because fear feeds on uncertainty. Action replaces uncertainty with facts. And facts can be handled. You already survived harder truths than this. You can survive seeing your current level. And once you do, something shifts. You stop delaying. You stop pretending. You start building. You have a choice. Protect the ego. Or build the self. Only one leads anywhere. You've now seen that procrastination is comfort. You've seen that it's ego protection. You've seen that delay hides truth. But knowing the truth isn't enough. You need a way to rebuild what delay destroyed. Self-trust. And that requires a tool stronger than motivation. Stronger than insight. You faced reality. Now it's time to repair yourself. Chapter 6, Discipline is how you repair self-trust. Let's reframe discipline. Discipline is not punishment. It is not restriction. It is not suffering for the sake of suffering. Discipline is self-repair. That's the key. When you procrastinated, you didn't just delay tasks. You damaged trust with yourself. And trust is not repaired with motivation. It's repaired with evidence. Small evidence. Repeated evidence. That's discipline. Keep small promises. Regain big confidence. Say it again. Keep small promises. Regain big confidence. Most people misunderstand confidence. They think confidence comes from success. From praise. From results. It doesn't. Confidence comes from reliability. From knowing, deep down, that when you say you'll do something, you do it. That's why discipline works. Not because it makes you productive. But because it makes you believable, to yourself. You have a choice. You can keep trying to feel confident. Or you can become reliable. Only one of those lasts. That's the key. Let's be clear. Self-trust is not rebuilt by big gestures. It's rebuilt by small, boring, consistent actions. The kind that don't impress anyone. The kind that don't feel heroic. That's why they work. Your brain does not care about speeches. It cares about patterns. If the pattern is, I act when it's inconvenient, trust grows. If the pattern is, I delay when it's uncomfortable, trust collapses. Simple. Now here's where people go wrong. They try to repair self-trust with ambition. They set massive goals. Extreme routines. Perfect plans. And then they break them. Again. Every broken promise sets them back further. So stop doing that. Discipline is not about how much you do. It's about how consistently you do what you said you would do. That's the key. Keep small promises. Regain big confidence. Let's talk mechanics. A promise should be small, clear, non-negotiable. Not, I'll work out more. Too vague. Not, I'll change my life. Too big. A real promise sounds like this. I will work for 5 minutes. I will write 1 paragraph. I will send 1 message. That's it. And when the time comes, you do it. No debate. No mood check. No delay. Why? Because discipline dies in negotiation. You have a choice. Negotiate with your feelings. Or honor your word. That's the line. And every time you honor it, something changes. Your posture shifts. Your energy stabilizes. Your mind stops doubting you. Not instantly. Gradually. That's how repair works. Now let's destroy another myth. People think discipline is harsh. It's not. Discipline is compassionate. Because it gives you structure when emotions are unstable. It says, you don't have to feel good. Just do this small thing. That's support. That's stability. That's how you rebuild after self-betrayal. It's not about intensity, it's about discipline. Say it. It's not about intensity, it's about discipline. Intensity burns out. Discipline compounds. Now here's something critical. You must stop breaking promises to yourself. Even small ones. Especially small ones. Because the brain doesn't measure promise size. It measures follow through. Break a promise, and trust drops. Keep it, and trust rises. There is no neutral. So lower the bar. Not out of weakness. Out of strategy. You are rebuilding. You don't sprint on a broken leg. You stabilize it first. Same principle. Now let's talk about non-negotiables. A non-negotiable action is something you do regardless of mood. Not because you feel strong. But because you decided once. Decision eliminates daily debate. Decision is discipline. Example. At 9 a.m., I work for 5 minutes. No exceptions. 5 minutes won't change your life. But keeping that promise will. Because identity changes first. Results come later. That's the order. Keep small promises. Regain big confidence. Say it again. Because repetition builds belief. Now let's talk about what discipline does over time. It quiets internal chaos. When you stop arguing with yourself, energy returns. When you stop breaking promises, shame fades. When your actions align with your words, self-respect grows. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Steadily. And steady beats everything. You don't need their permission to rebuild slowly. You don't need approval. You need patience with the process. Discipline is not fast. But it's permanent. Now here's another mistake people make. They wait to feel back on track before acting disciplined. Wrong. Discipline puts you back on track. You don't fix alignment first. You act, and alignment follows. That's the key. Action repairs trust. Trust restores confidence. Confidence fuels momentum. Not the other way around. So stop waiting. You have a choice. You can keep hoping self-trust returns on its own. Or you can rebuild it deliberately. One promise at a time. Now let's talk about setbacks. You will miss a day. You will slip. That's not failure. Failure is quitting. Repair doesn't require perfection. It requires returning. Miss once, recommit immediately. No drama. No punishment. Just return. Discipline is not fragile. Ego is. Drop the ego. Return to the action. That's strength. Now let's give you a clear instruction. For the next 14 days, choose one non-negotiable promise. Just one. Small. Specific. Daily. Then keep it. No matter how you feel. Track nothing else. Don't add more. Let confidence rebuild quietly. Because confidence doesn't need to be announced. It needs to be earned. And you earn it with consistency. Keep small promises. Regain big confidence. Now understand this. Discipline is not something you've become. It's something you practice. Daily. And the more you practice it, the less effort it requires. Eventually, action becomes automatic. Not because you're motivated. But because you're aligned. Aligned people don't struggle to act. They just act. That's where you're going. But only if you stop chasing big change and commit to small truth. You have a choice. Break another promise. Or keep one today. That single decision matters more than anything else you'll do. You've now learned how discipline repairs self-trust. You've learned how small actions rebuild identity. You've learned how to stabilize yourself again. But there's another truth you must face. Discipline doesn't just build confidence. It also teaches you something uncomfortable about pain. About cost. About what delay really takes from you. You repaired self-trust. Now let's confront the price of hesitation. Chapter 7, The pain of action is short. The pain of delay is permanent. Pain is unavoidable. That's the truth. The question is not whether you will feel pain. The question is which pain you choose. That's the key. Most people think procrastination avoids pain. It doesn't. It postpones one kind of pain and guarantees another. Action hurts briefly. Delay hurts endlessly. Temporary pain or permanent regret, choose consciously. Say it again. Temporary pain or permanent regret, choose consciously. This is where most people lie to themselves. They tell themselves, I'll do it later. They think later will be easier. It won't. Later is heavier. Because delay adds weight. Every day you don't act, you don't stay neutral. You accumulate regret. Regret compounds quietly. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Daily. Let's make this real. 5 minutes of effort feels uncomfortable, awkward, resistant. But 5 minutes end. Regret doesn't. Regret follows you to bed. It shows up in the mirror. It whispers when things are quiet. That's the cost of delay. And it grows. Temporary pain or permanent regret, choose consciously. That's the key. People underestimate how heavy regret becomes. At first, it's subtle. I should have started earlier. I knew better. Then it sharpens. I wasted time. I let myself down. Eventually, it hardens into identity. I'm the kind of person who doesn't follow through. That's the permanent pain. Not dramatic failure. Slow erosion. And the worst part? Regret feels deserved. Because deep down, you know the truth. You had a choice. You always had a choice. Now let's talk about action pain. Action pain is immediate. Clear. Contained. It shows up as resistance. As friction. As effort. But it fades. Because the body adapts. The mind adjusts. Momentum builds. You don't stay in action pain. You move through it. That's the difference. Delay pain stays. It doesn't exhaust itself. It feeds itself. Every missed action reinforces it. That's why people feel tired without doing anything. They are carrying regret. You have a choice. Feel the burn of effort now. Or feel the weight of regret later. One lasts minutes. The other lasts years. That's the trade. It's not about comfort, it's about discipline. Say it. It's not about comfort, it's about discipline. Discipline chooses the short pain on purpose. Because disciplined people understand cost. They don't ask, what feels better now? They ask, what costs less long term? That's maturity. Now let's talk about why people still choose delay. Because the pain of action is honest. And honesty is uncomfortable. When you act, you confront reality. When you delay, you hide from it. But hiding has interest. It charges you daily. And the bill always comes due. You don't need their permission to feel discomfort. You don't need approval. You need perspective. Perspective says, this pain will end. Regret doesn't. Now let's break another illusion. People think regret is emotional. It's not. Regret is cognitive. It's the mind replaying missed decisions. Over and over. What if? I should have. If only. Those loops drain energy. That's why regret ages people. It steals presence. Action pain doesn't do that. Action pain makes you sharper. More focused. More alive. Because you are engaged. Engagement beats avoidance every time. Temporary pain or permanent regret, choose consciously. Now let's talk about scale. People delay small actions thinking the cost is small. Wrong. Small delays compound into massive regret. Because identity is built from repetition. One skipped action becomes a habit. Habits become character. Character shapes life. That's not dramatic. That's arithmetic. And arithmetic doesn't care about excuses. You have a choice. Choose the math of action. Or the math of delay. Only one works in your favor. Now let's be practical. When resistance hits, your brain exaggerates pain. It says, this will be exhausting. This will take forever. It's lying. Most tasks are hardest before you start. 5 minutes in, the pain drops. But regret never drops. It rises. That's the key. So here's the instruction. When you feel resistance, count down from 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then start. No thinking. Why? Because thinking magnifies pain. Action shrinks it. That's discipline in motion. You don't need to finish. You need to begin. Beginning collapses imagined pain. Now let's talk about self-disgust. Self-disgust doesn't come from failure. It comes from avoidance. Failing while trying still preserves self-respect. Not trying destroys it. That's why people who fail often recover faster than those who delay. Failure has edges. Delay has none. Delay spreads everywhere. That's the permanent pain. Temporary pain or permanent regret, choose consciously. Say it until it sticks. Because choice awareness is power. Now here's something most people don't realize. Regret also steals future courage. The more regret you carry, the harder it becomes to act. Not because you're weaker. Because the emotional cost is higher. You're not just facing the task. You're facing accumulated disappointment. That's why starting early matters. Not because of time. Because of emotional load. Discipline lightens the load. Every action reduces future pain. Every delay adds to it. There is no pause button. You have a choice. Now let's address the final excuse. People say, I don't want to push myself too hard. But avoiding effort is pushing pain forward. You will pay either way. The only difference is timing. Action pain is paid up front. Regret pain is paid daily. One payment. Or a subscription. Choose wisely. It's not about avoiding pain, it's about choosing pain. That's the truth. Now here's the reframe you need to adopt. Discomfort is not damage. It's investment. You invest discomfort now to buy peace later. Delay does the opposite. It borrows comfort now and pays with regret later. And the interest rate is brutal. You don't need their permission to invest in yourself. You don't need validation. You need to decide which pain you respect. Because pain will respect you back. Now bring this chapter home. Think of the one action you've been avoiding. The one that keeps coming back to your mind. That's not random. That's regret knocking early. Answer it. 5 minutes. That's all. End the loop. Because once you act, something powerful happens. The pain disappears. The regret dissolves. Self-respect returns. And you realize something important. Action pain was never the enemy. Delay was. You've now learned that procrastination doesn't remove pain. It multiplies it. You've learned that action pain fades. Regret doesn't. But there's one more reason people stay stuck even when they understand this. They confuse effort with value. They don't understand what truly separates average lives from exceptional ones. You chose action over regret. Now let's talk about where that choice leads. Chapter 8, Procrastination is how people stay average. Average is not an accident. Average is a pattern. A pattern of delay. A pattern of hesitation. A pattern of waiting. That's the key. Most average lives are not built by failure. They are built by postponement. People don't fail dramatically. They delay quietly. And delay is invisible. No one calls it out. No one punishes it immediately. But it works relentlessly. Speed is self-respect in motion. Say it again. Speed is self-respect in motion. Average people are not less intelligent. They are not less talented. They are not less capable. They are slower to act. That's the difference. They wait for certainty. They wait for confidence. They wait for the right time. And while they wait, life moves on. Winners don't wait. They move with incomplete information. They act with imperfect conditions. They decide before they feel ready. That's the separation. You have a choice. You can delay until clarity appears. Or you can act and let clarity follow. Only one works. That's the key. Let's remove a dangerous myth. People believe average lives are the result of bad luck. They're not. They are the result of delayed decisions. Small delays. Repeated daily. Not one big mistake. Thousands of small hesitations. I'll start next week. I'll send it later. I'll think about it more. Those sentences sound harmless. They're lethal. Because they slow you down. And speed matters more than people want to admit. Not reckless speed. Decisive speed. The speed to begin. The speed to respond. The speed to move before comfort sets in. Speed is self-respect in motion. Average people confuse thinking with progress. Winners confuse action with learning. That's the difference. Average people want guarantees. Winners accept risk. Average people want to look competent. Winners want to become competent. That requires action. Now let's talk about execution. Execution is not intelligence. It's urgency. The willingness to move now instead of later. You don't need their permission to act fast. You don't need approval. You need to stop equating speed with recklessness. Slow decisions feel safe. They are not. They bleed opportunity. Opportunities don't wait for comfort. They reward movement. That's reality. You have a choice. Move now and adjust later. Or delay and watch someone else move. That's the trade. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Someone less talented than you is ahead of you right now. Not because they're better. Because they act faster. They send the email. They make the call. They start the project. While you prepare. Preparation feels responsible. But excessive preparation is procrastination in disguise. That's the key. Average lives are filled with preparation. Exceptional lives are filled with execution. It's not about intelligence, it's about discipline. Say it. It's not about intelligence, it's about discipline. Discipline moves you forward before fear agrees. Now let's address hesitation. Hesitation is the habit of average. It looks like caution. It sounds like wisdom. But it's often fear wearing a suit. Fear of being wrong. Fear of failing publicly. Fear of wasting effort. So people slow down. They overthink. They overanalyze. And life passes. Speed doesn't mean rushing blindly. It means deciding quickly and correcting fast. That's how winners operate. They don't wait to be perfect. They iterate. Iteration beats perfection every time. You have a choice. Be precise and slow. Or be fast and improving. Only one leads anywhere. That's the key. Now let's talk about self-respect. Self-respect is not how you feel about yourself. It's how quickly you act on your standards. When you act immediately, you reinforce identity. I am someone who moves. That identity compounds. When you delay, you erode it. I am someone who hesitates. That also compounds. And compound identity shapes destiny. Speed is self-respect in motion. Say it until it replaces the old belief. Because speed builds confidence. Not the other way around. Act fast, and confidence follows. Wait for confidence, and you stay average. Now here's a hard truth. Average people spend most of their time deciding. Winners spend most of their time doing. Decision-making should be fast. Execution should be patient. Most people reverse it. They overthink decisions and rush execution. That leads to chaos. Winners decide fast and execute steadily. That leads to momentum. Momentum is power. And momentum only comes from movement. You don't need their permission to move faster. You don't need validation. You need to respect your time. Time respects speed. Now let's make this practical. For the next decision you face, set a timer. 2 minutes. Decide within it. No research spiral. No second guessing. Decide. Then act immediately. Not later. Immediately. Why? Because speed kills doubt. Doubt feeds on delay. And doubt is the fuel of average lives. Now understand this. Speed does not mean success is guaranteed. It means learning is accelerated. You might fail faster. Good. Failure teaches faster than delay ever will. Delay teaches nothing. It just consumes time. And time is the only resource you can't replace. Average people waste time protecting ego. Winners invest time building skill. That's the trade. You have a choice. Protect ego through delay. Or build skill through action. Only one compounds. That's the key. Now let's dismantle the final excuse. People say, I don't want to rush important decisions. But most decisions are reversible. What's not reversible? Lost time. Lost momentum. Lost belief. Those are permanent. Speed preserves momentum. Momentum preserves belief. Belief fuels discipline. And discipline creates results. That's the chain. Speed is self-respect in motion. Now feel the weight of that line. Because it's not about rushing. It's about respecting yourself enough to act. When you delay, you're telling yourself, this can wait. And when everything can wait, nothing changes. Average lives are patient with delay. Exceptional lives are impatient with stagnation. They don't tolerate hesitation. They move. Even when unsure. Especially when unsure. Because movement reveals truth. Now bring this chapter home. Look at your life. Where are you slow? Where are you overthinking? Where are you waiting for permission? That's where average is hiding. Expose it with speed. One decision. One action. Now. Because the moment you move faster, something shifts. Energy rises. Confidence returns. Self-respect strengthens. You stop feeling stuck. Not because life changed. Because you did. You've learned that procrastination keeps people average. You've learned that speed separates winners. You've learned that execution beats intelligence. But speed alone is not enough. If you want to move fast consistently, you must remove something else. Choice. You moved faster. Now let's make sure you never slow down again. Chapter 9, Build Systems that Remove Choice. Willpower is not your solution. That's the truth. If willpower worked, your life would already look different. That's the key. Most people fail because they rely on emotion-driven decisions. They wake up and decide whether to act. They negotiate with feelings. They ask their mood for permission. That's weakness disguised as freedom. High performers don't rely on willpower. They rely on systems. Systems remove choice. And what you remove from choice, you protect from failure. Say it. What you remove from choice, you protect from failure. That's the key. Every time you give yourself a choice, you invite emotion into the room. And emotion always argues for comfort. Always. You don't lose discipline because you're weak. You lose discipline because you left the door open. Choice is that door. You have a choice. You can keep trusting feelings. Or you can design systems that don't care how you feel. Only one works consistently. Now let's be clear. Systems are not rigid cages. They are support structures. They hold you steady when motivation collapses. And motivation will collapse. That's normal. That's why systems exist. You don't need their permission to stop relying on willpower. You don't need approval. You need to tell the truth. Willpower is unreliable. Environment is not. Environment beats willpower every time. That's the key. Let's break this down. If your phone is next to you, you will check it. If junk food is in reach, you will eat it. If distractions are available, you will use them. Not because you're flawed. Because you're human. Stop fighting biology. Design around it. That's discipline. It's not about motivation, it's about discipline. Say it. It's not about motivation, it's about discipline. Discipline is not forcing yourself to resist temptation. It's removing temptation before it appears. Now let's talk about negotiation. Negotiation is where discipline dies. Every internal debate drains energy. Should I start now? Maybe later. I'll do it after this. That internal noise is exhausting. Systems eliminate noise. They say, this happens at this time. No discussion. That's peace. That's power. Now let's talk about why people resist systems. Because systems feel restrictive. But lack of structure is what's been trapping you. Freedom without structure is chaos. Structure creates freedom. When actions are automatic, your mind is free. That's the paradox. What you remove from choice, you protect from failure. Now let's make this practical. A system has 3 parts. Trigger. Action. Environment. Example. Trigger, 9 a.m. Action, work for 10 minutes. Environment, phone in another room. Desk clear. No choice. No negotiation. You don't ask how you feel. You act because the system says so. That's discipline. And here's the important part. Systems don't require motivation. They require setup. Once built, they run. Most people try to run without building. That's backward. Build first. Then rely on structure. You have a choice. Keep fighting yourself every day. Or design a system once. That's the trade. Now let's destroy another myth. People think systems kill creativity. They don't. They protect it. When basics are automated, mental energy is freed. No decision fatigue. No emotional drag. Just execution. That's how professionals operate. They don't decide whether to work. They decide when, once. Then they follow the system. You don't need their permission to do this. You don't need to justify structure. You need results. Now let's talk about environment design. Environment is the invisible hand controlling behavior. Change the environment, behavior changes automatically. If your workspace invites distraction, discipline will struggle. If your environment supports focus, discipline becomes easy. That's the key. So stop blaming yourself. Start adjusting surroundings. Put friction in front of bad habits. Remove friction from good ones. Make the right action easy. Make the wrong action inconvenient. That's system thinking. And system thinking wins. What you remove from choice, you protect from failure. Now let's talk about consistency. Consistency is not effort repeated. It's structure maintained. You don't need to feel consistent. You need consistent systems. Once systems are in place, discipline becomes boring. That's good. Boring is sustainable. Excitement fades. Structure remains. Now here's a warning. Do not build complex systems. Complex systems collapse. Build simple ones. One trigger. One action. One environment rule. That's it. Simplicity survives. You don't need 10 habits. You need one that sticks. Then another. Sequential. Not simultaneous. That's discipline. You have a choice. Build one system properly. Or keep restarting motivation cycles. Only one compounds. Now let's address the final resistance. People say, I want to feel free. But what they really want is relief from chaos. Systems give that. When you stop deciding, stress drops. When you stop negotiating, energy returns. When you remove choice, self-trust stabilizes. That's the reward. Now here's your instruction. Pick one daily action that matters. 1. Decide the time. Decide the environment. Remove all alternatives. Then follow it for 14 days. No changes. No upgrades. Just consistency. That system will do more for your life than motivation ever did. Because motivation comes and goes. Systems stay. It's not about willpower, it's about discipline. Say it. It's not about willpower, it's about discipline. Now bring this chapter home. You've learned that procrastination is self-betrayal. You've learned that motivation lies. You've learned that comfort is addictive. You've learned that delay protects ego. You've learned how discipline repairs trust. You've learned that action pain is short. You've learned that average lives are slow. You've learned that systems remove failure. There's only one thing left. Identity. Because systems only work if you adopt the identity that follows them. You remove choice. Now you must become someone who acts automatically. Not occasionally. Immediately. You built the structure. Now it's time to step into the final identity shift. Chapter 10, Become the person who acts immediately. This is the final shift. Not a tactic. Not a trick. An identity. You are no longer someone who tries. You are no longer someone who plans. You are someone who acts. That's the key. Everything you've learned so far leads here. Discipline is not something you do. It is something you are. And identity changes everything. You have a choice. You can keep seeing action as an effort. Or you can make it your default. One is exhausting. The other is powerful. Most people live in preparation. They think. They plan. They intend. But intention without action is self-deception. Trying is a delay strategy. Trying gives you an exit. Trying lets you quit without guilt. Action doesn't. Action is honest. You act because that is who you are now. Say it again. You act because that is who you are now. Identity answers the question before it's asked. When resistance shows up, identity responds automatically. No debate. No negotiation. This is why identity matters more than goals. Goals are external. Identity is internal. When identity changes, behavior follows. That's the key. Let's expose the old identity. The old you waited. The old you negotiated. The old you needed permission. From mood. From comfort. From confidence. That version of you is done. Because waiting has already cost you enough. You don't need their permission anymore. You don't need motivation. You don't need certainty. You need to move. And movement is no longer optional. You have a choice. Live as someone who reacts. Or live as someone who initiates. Initiators run their lives. Reactors watch theirs pass. That's the line. Now let's define the new standard. Immediate action. Not reckless. Not perfect. Immediate. When you know what needs to be done, you start. Not later. Not after thinking. Now. This is not about speed for its own sake. It's about alignment. When thought and action are close together, integrity grows. When they are far apart, self-respect erodes. That's the key. The person who acts immediately does not wait for the perfect feeling. They understand something fundamental. Feelings follow behavior. Identity follows repetition. So they repeat action. Every time you act immediately, you reinforce the identity. I am someone who moves. That sentence becomes truth through repetition. Now let's remove another illusion. People think acting immediately means always being busy. Wrong. It means acting decisively. When it's time to work, you work. When it's time to rest, you rest. No overlap. No guilt. No avoidance. Clarity replaces chaos. That's discipline. It's not about pressure, it's about discipline. Say it. It's not about pressure, it's about discipline. Discipline is calm. It doesn't rush. It doesn't panic. It simply acts when it's time. Now let's talk about standards. Standards define identity. A standard is a rule you don't negotiate. For you now, the standard is simple. When I know the next action, I take it. That's it. No emotional check-in. No delay buffer. Action first. You have a choice. Raise this standard. Or stay where you are. There is no middle ground. Now let's address fear. Fear will still appear. But fear no longer gets a vote. Fear is information, not instruction. You acknowledge it. Then you act anyway. That's maturity. That's strength. That's who you are now. You don't need their permission to be decisive. You don't need approval to act. You need to trust yourself. And trust is built through consistency. Immediate action is consistency in motion. Now let's talk about the 1-second rule. The moment you identify the next action, you move within 1 second. Why? Because hesitation invites doubt. Doubt invites delay. Delay invites regression. 1 second protects momentum. Momentum protects identity. That's the key. You don't think yourself into action. You act yourself into clarity. Now let's dismantle the final excuse. People say, "That's not who I am." Not yet. Identity is not discovered. It's earned. You earn it by acting like it before it feels natural. Every identity you admire was built this way. No one starts confident. They act confident. No one starts disciplined. They act disciplined. Behavior first. Identity second. Always. You act because that is who you are now. Say it until it replaces the old story. Now here's your final instruction. From this point forward, stop using the words, "I'll try." Replace them. Say, "I will act." Then do it immediately. Language shapes behavior. Behavior shapes identity. This is not motivational talk. This is conditioning. And conditioning works. Now let's close the loop. You learned that procrastination is self-betrayal. You learned that motivation lies. You learned that comfort is addictive. You learned that delay protects ego. You learned how discipline repairs trust. You learned that action pain fades. You learned that average lives are slow. You learned that systems remove choice. And now you've learned the final truth. Identity is the endgame. You don't rise to goals. You fall to identity. So choose it carefully. You have a choice. Go back to planning. Go back to waiting. Go back to trying. Or step forward. Act immediately. Every time. Not because it's easy. Not because it feels good. But because it's who you are now. This book does not end with inspiration. It ends with a decision. Right now, there is something you know you should do. Don't bookmark this moment. Don't think about it. Act. Because from this point forward, there is only one rule. You act because that is who you are now. And once you live that rule, procrastination has nowhere left to hide. Procrastination was never about time. It was about trust. And every time you delayed, you trained yourself to doubt your own word. But today, that pattern ends. Discipline is not force, it is self-loyalty in action. You do not need more information. You do not need more motivation. You need to act, especially when you don't feel like it. Because action is how self-respect is rebuilt. Right now, there is one task you've been avoiding. Do it today. Not perfectly. Not confidently. But immediately. Let this be the moment you stop negotiating with weakness. Keep your word to yourself. And watch how fast your life changes when you finally become someone you can trust.